Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be reviewing and discussing the Lunar New Year's Godfest that is occurring on Tuesday. So, as a way to celebrate the Lunar New Year, which is the year of the rooster, Gung Ho has given us a Godfest in the middle of the week that also features 5 times Godfest exclusive rates along with plus 20 to a random stat. Now, for the most part, oh my goodness, why did it not go more? But for the most part, the Egyptian One pantheon is one of the older pantheons in existence, along with the Chinese Celestials, actually. And unlike the Chinese Celestials, the Egyptian ones have gained new evolutions, which has definitely propelled their uses and viabilities ahead, because anything that is released more recently is generally better positioned against power creep. Conversely, the Chinese Celestials are just as old, but they haven't received any buffs or evolutions for quite some time now, and they're a little lackluster, partially in part because of the Heart Cross meta and how 4 out of the 5 failed to produce Heart Orbs with their active skill. So, in addition to the 2 featured pantheons on their respective days, we also have a Godfest exclusive lineup, and I will be going over all of this in greater detail. So, one thing to keep in mind is that the 5 times Godfest exclusive rates and how pressing it is to roll 6-star Godfest exclusives is kind of something to take into consideration whether or not you should roll. Because from the Player's Choice Godfest that we did have maybe a couple months ago, it was apparent that 6-star Godfest exclusives are the most important card to have, because 6 stars are used on essentially every single team nowadays, and it becomes quite challenging to try and build less than ideal teams without them. So, presently speaking, in my opinion, Kaede, Dark Kali, and Kanna are generally the strongest 6-star Godfest exclusives right now, mostly because they work well on their respective high-end teams, most notably Raw Dragon, as well as Kaede teams and Ranave teams. So, these are kind of like almost the holy trinity, if you may, for Godfest exclusives at this point in time. So generally you want to try and find Godfests that feature those cards. Unfortunately, in this Lunar New Year's Godfest, we have Kaede Kanna on day 1 and only Dark Kali on day 2. So you're kind of split in terms of where you should be rolling. However, one thing you should also keep in mind is that the newer Godfest exclusives that are released tend to be stronger than the older ones, mostly because, again, newer cards are better positioned against power creep because they're released at a time when they're trying to be more appealing. So, on day 1, as a general rule, it features the 3 older ones, which are kind of lackluster, most notably the Odins, Metatrons, and Sanyas, whereas day 2 actually does not feature any of those whatsoever. So, day 2 actually might have more value from a purely Godfest exclusive lineup point of view. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So as promised, I'm going to go through all the individual Pantheon monsters at a greater look, as well as the Godfest exclusives for each day as a whole. So, the Egyptian one, like I mentioned earlier, is a very old Pantheon, but they are a bit more relevant nowadays just because of the current buffs they keep receiving, most notably through their new evolutions. And these reincarnated evolutions greatly propel their base stats, their leadership potential, and overall functionality. So they are quite strong. Unfortunately, they're somewhat marred by the fact that they do actually have an active skill clause to activate their full multiplier. And being forced to use an active skill every single turn to deal sufficient damage can be problematic from a team building point of view, because you might have to either sacrifice 1 sub-slot for something that just has a 1 or 2 turn cooldown, or you have to stall, and it can be challenging because the recovery multipliers, if they exist, only occur under certain scenarios. So again, you're a bit more restricted in what you can do with the Egyptian ones. So that can be a little frustrating. However, right now, Isis is still one of the most popular cards in the game because of the dominance of Raw Dragon, as well as reincarnated Horus being actually a lot more powerful nowadays as a base for skill inheritance due to the fact that he has massive weighted stats and a low cooldown that's easy to inherit something over top of. So, this is a new format I'm trying out for my Godfest reviews. Let me know if you think it works well. It's a lot more time consuming, so if it's not working that well, I probably won't continue it, but let me know what you think about it. So, for Horus, as you can see from his reincarnated form, he has significantly higher weighted stats, a nice plethora of awakenings, most notably dual 2-prongs, and the same 4-turn active skill that's a bit lackluster. His leader skill has been propelled into 400 times attack and 4 times recovery when using an active skill and matching all 5 colors. So all 5 colors is not that hard to do, but an active skill every turn can be challenging. And In terms of the pros, it has a flexible leader skill because it can go from 16 to 25 to 100 times damage, or actually even just 4 times if you don't match colors, as well as the high rated stats. It does have that 100 times attack, which is reasonably sufficient for most content. And his short cool active skill does have a low enough cooldown to inherit something over top of it, probably more notable for usage as a sub, because dual leaders is actually a little lackluster. It's got 2 skill bind resists, which can alleviate team building constraints in solo mode, as well as covering water and fire, which can be helpful for rainbow teams, most notably himself. And he can actually use Heartbreakers because of the fact that their leader skill does not require heart orbs for activations, so you can at least flood the board with a bit more damage. However, as drawbacks, they're active skill reliant for damage, and if you don't use an active skill, it's 25 times, and that's not enough for most content. In addition, that RCV and recovery component is tied to that active skill usage. So again, if you want to heal and stall, you actually have to use an active skill, which kind of is counterintuitive to stalling. In addition, their damage is actually only okay. Like, it's not that great overall, like when you look at other leaders. And I guess some people like to joke that it's the wrong chicken because Raw Dragon hasn't come out yet. And maybe it's the year of the rooster, so maybe Horus does deserve a little spotlight right now. However, another thing to keep in mind is that with dual Horus leaders, their active skills are a little lackluster, so even though that they do enhance all orbs, it's just not that beneficial overall, to be fair. So, I'm just going to be allowing you to read through the impressions on your own if you want. I'm just going to skim through it because it might take a little more time. This article will be linked in the YouTube description down below, so you can read them at your own pace. However, I try and cover all the points and the pros and cons anyways. So, Awoken Isis. They're the only Egyptian one who does not actually have a reincarnated evolution, so it's unusual. However, they're still the most powerful and desirable one for the most part, because they are pretty much an irreplaceable sub on Raw Dragon teams, as well as acting as a great base for skill inheritance on mono water teams, and a quick bind clear if you so need that. So their active skill reduces damage by 15% with a 2-turn bind clear on only a 3-turn cooldown. In addition, their leader skill is quite outdated, to be honest. It's only 20.25 times attack, so nothing spectacular in all honesty, and also needs an active skill to trigger it, so it's just not worthwhile. And in terms of the pros, they are a staple Raw Dragon sub because they cover the water and wood attribute as well as having that god typing and being bind immune. They have a 3-turn cooldown, which is beneficial in the sense that you can easily inherit something over top of it, as well as covering the water wood again, like I mentioned. The bind immunity is not only important for Raw Dragon, but if you're using her as a sub on other teams, because she can be that bind immune base to inherit a stronger active skill to clear various binds. And they're actually one of the stronger starting leaders in the game because they're actually quite friendly. Yes, the early game is very short nowadays, but not everyone is going through it crazy fast. Not everyone is creating an alt to just power level. If you're starting out for the very first time, Isis is a reasonable card to start with just because it'll teach you how to combo, has enough damage to get through the early game content. In terms of cons, they don't have the reincarnated evolution. So the reincarnated evolution is only important for Raw Dragon teams because they need that water wood typing. And if she were to lose her wood subtyping, it would not have, most people would not actually reincarnate her because they want to keep it for Raw Dragons. And in addition, because of the lack of reincarnated evolution, they have lower weighted stats. Again, it's a small nitpick, but it's something worth mentioning. And once you enter mid-game or even end-game, her leadership potential pretty much just diminishes down. Now, I just want to elaborate more about that water wood typing because right now, Sunquan and Orochi are probably the better options right now, maybe Balboa as well actually, in terms of those color coverages. And Isis just does everything better because she is bind immune right now. Balboa gets stronger in the future, but Balboa has killers, which can be problematic. But right now, Isis is a little stronger than Sunquan and Orochi because of the short cooldown. You can inherit anything you want over top of it, and the bind immunity. The bind immunity is important because it preserves that whole bind immunity across an ideal Raw Dragon team. So that is something to keep in mind when you are deciding which sub to use. Now, generally speaking, if you have the Dark Callies, you should go for the Raw Dragon if you have Isis, because Canna, while being amazing, is kind of luxurious, in all honesty. You can get away with, say, an Ariel or maybe other reincarnated gods. So if you have Isis and Dark Callies, you should really think about purchasing Raw Dragon, because presently speaking, he is essentially the strongest team in the game when you have the ideal setup as well as latents. No, sorry, not latents, inheritance or skill assists. Next is reincarnated Bastet, and she has basically gained 1,000 weighted stats as well as an extra TPA awakening, so Her body is a lot stronger than her awoken form, and her active skill is still lackluster. It's a 5-turn cooldown that accomplishes very little for the most part. And her leader skill has been significantly improved because she used to be a 36 times leader. Now she's 156 times. So she is incredibly powerful in terms of a damage dealing potential because yes, you need to hit 9 combos, but you can throw in TPAs, you can stack wood orb generators, you have very high TPA subs. You can do an amazing amount of damage at the cost of being vulnerable to every mechanic in the game. So in the pros section, she does have this scaling leader skill that ramps up based on the number of combos you match, in addition to using an active skill to augment your damage further. So you have some damage control and flexibility there. The high weighted stats are obviously very welcomed, as well as having the potential to hit 156 times as a leader. And like that is actually quite powerful because unlike say Horus, who's forced to match other colors, Bastet does not. She can make multiple wood combos and deal lethal damage with TPAs because you could be running cards like Vishnu, Osiris, Mei, all these cards with dual TPAs, and you're going to be hitting for an incredibly hard amount of damage. Their short active skill is at least reasonable in a sense because at least it's short, you can inherit something over top of it with ease. And her team building is flexible. You can use any wood card you want, like there's no restrictions whatsoever. And cute is a very important factor because this is puzzles and waifus. Now, in terms of cons, they are active skill reliant. So the fact that they have to use an active skill to trigger their damage is problematic because you might have to use something like Gunma, who, while is a strong card, is not really something you want all the time, to be honest. And if you don't use an active skill, you only have 25 times attack at 9 combos, so that's very unrewarding, and you are going to struggle if you don't actually have an active skill to press every single turn. And the damage is okay, like 156 is great, but it is somewhat inconsistent. You have to have lots of wood orbs present, and to a certain extent, in terms of glass cannons available, it's not as desirable from at least an efficiency point of view. It may be very fun to play, but it's not as efficient as, say, someone like Sarasvati, who's going to hit 100 times with Rose with only 3 combos potentially. So by comparison, Sarasvati is a much more efficient glass cannon leader. And last but not least, their base active is quite weak. It does really nothing aside from maybe triggering your leader skills multiplier or overriding time debuffs. It's just not a very powerful active skill. If she had a better active skill and maybe even some defensive multiplier, she'd be an amazingly fun leader to use. So if you are trying to compare to Bastet, Reincarnate Bastet does win out from a maximum multiplier point of view, but because you don't have to run the risk of making too many wood orbs because Bastet needs 9 wood orbs minimum for maximum multiplier. So Reincarnate Bastet can activate off any board provided you use an active skill. So you can use cards like Gunma so you have a bit more consistency in those regards. In addition, there's no God Killer on Reincarnated. So that is good against Sobdet and Arena because Bastet will be hitting too much in most cases against Sobdet. So at least Bastet can control her damage a lot better by comparison. Next is Reincarnated Ra, and he gains an extra time extend. He still has the same true damage active, and his leader skill is very powerful in the sense that you have 225 times attack for all 5 colors, and 4 times recovery when you use an active skill for gods and devil types. So it is an improvement obviously over the Awoken form, but his leadership is still somewhat marred by the fact that you are only 25 times without an active skill. So in terms of pros, you have basically, well, you technically have 9, 25, or 225 times damage. You have 4 times recovery, which is helpful at least. You have the 1,000 weighted stats. The easy activation requirements. I'm saying easy because it's easy for what the reward is. 5 colors is not too challenging to actually achieve, and the fact that you get 225 times damage off of that is quite amazing. Obviously, you have to use that active skill, but the point being is it's quite a high damage output leader skill for the amount of effort required. The true damage is great for bypassing those high defense cards and even one-shotting the extreme metal king dragon. They are bind immune, so again, bind immune leaders are more powerful because you can cheese through various content. You can use Heartbreakers to flood your board with more light orbs if you need more damage. And for the most part, they're able to create very powerful and potent specialized farming teams because you can build around fixed spawns as well as having the required active skills for every single floor. Now, in terms of cons, you have that same active skill reliancy. If you only hit 25 times damage, you're probably not going you're probably not going to kill most floors because, well, it's not enough damage in today's meta. And what makes it worse is that that recovery component is tied to that active skill clause. So if you're stalling for actives, you obviously don't want to be popping actives, but if you need to pop actives to gain more recovery, it's again counterintuitive, kind of like how Horus works, so it's just unfortunate. If it had the passive recovery all the time, he'd be a significantly stronger leader and much more popular in all honesty. And their base active is weak in all honesty. It's great when it's required, but you rarely need to have 2 reincarnated raw actives in a dungeon. It's just very rare, to be honest. So that active skill is mostly used for the buttoning because reincarnated raw does function as a very strong button team sub. Their active skill can again pierce through all the high defense monsters. You can easily inherit him away because it's only a 7-turn cooldown. And the fact of the matter is, you can never have enough raw, like too many raws, because you want to inherit them around. You want to just make a full button team, has skill boost, bind immunity. Like, it's just a stronger button option if you don't want to bother farming and you are, I guess, lucky with the rare machine rolls. Another thing I want to point out is that he does have very powerful niche farming potentials because you are able to basically plan out dungeons with fixed spawns for your active skill usage. So for the most part, he's one of the most popular leaders for at least farming Machine Zeus because you can create a very carry-oriented team where you can basically carry a weaker player through Machine Zeus without spending any stones. And the fact of the matter that his his leader skill is significantly stronger, you don't have to have the reliance on machine killer cards anymore. So my team setup I use to farm Machine Zeus is obviously not as perfect as the true carry builds because I rely a bit on both accounts contributing some actives. And you can read more about it here if you are interested in trying to create a Machine Zeus carry team. And last but not least for the Egyptian ones is Reincarnated Anubis. And Reincarnated Anubis gained the Recover Bind Awakening, which is invaluable because now he's bind immune and can clear binds. Granted, he doesn't make hard orbs with his active skill, but at least it's an option or something to inherit over. And his leader skill has been significantly revamped because he only requires 11 combos for maximum damage, but also starts ramping up at 9, which is a little unrealistic. Furthermore, he's able to cap out at 900 times attack, so that basically obliterates anything in the game. So, you do have some damage control. You do have 9 times damage with an active skill. You do have 25 times at 9 combos. And obviously you have obliterating amounts of damage with active skills and 11 combos. That Recover Bind Awakening is beneficial because you are able to basically clear off binds from your other cards, whether he's used as a leader or as a sub, so that can be beneficial. You can also inherit a hard orb generating active over top of it. Of course, you can always inherit a bind clear active as well, but you at least have some flexibility of that Recover Bind Awakening. His active skill does remove those hazardous jammers and poisons, so it can reduce the need to bring a full board changer if the hazards are sporadically spaced throughout the board. Instead of it being like, say, Beelzebub's full board change, it's say like a bunch of poison orbs from Grizzard, you can convert them away to dark orbs, which is fantastic. And he still remains the one true god, which is kind of a joke from a long time ago. In terms of cons, inconsistency is kind of another name for Anubis. 9 times combos is not feasible in most cases. To be honest, a given board will generally have 7 to 8 combos on average. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get the 9. So you have to obviously maximize the board matching and then pray to RNGesus for that Skyfall in order to trigger multiplier, because if you don't trigger that multiplier, you're going to be not hitting enough damage, so that is problematic. So you are taking a giant gamble playing him. Obviously 7x6 boards, it's a lot easier, but even still, 9 combos is challenging to achieve on a consistent basis. He has no defensive multipliers, and that again is a problem because with no defensive multipliers, you are vulnerable to mechanics, because if you don't hit those 9 combos, you have to basically dance around with a boss and you may not necessarily want to dance with. And their active skill does have a relatively long cooldown. Yes, it does remove hazards, but unlike, say, Castor, who has a haste component, the counterattack is largely irrelevant in most cases. You can cheese through bosses like, say, Zeus and Hera, but for the most part, counterattack is not the greatest secondary benefit from an active skill. So another thing you may want to keep in mind is you may want to pair, say, A10 or other 7x6 leaders, hopefully in the future. But for the most part, it's just a challenging leader to use because, again, it's hard to get 9 combos from a given board. So if you do want to use Reincarnated Anubis as a leader, it's going to be fun. It can clear all the content of the game in theory, it just has lower consistency. I feel like this took a... okay, so in terms of day 1's featured Godfest exclusives, they have all the Odins, Sonyas, and Metatrons. So again, those are the older Godfest exclusives, so they are a little weaker. Yes, you do have Kaede and Kana, but the fact of the matter is you do have older Godfest exclusives kind of taking up space. So if you are, say, a player who has most of those cards, they don't have as much value in dupes. Maybe the Sonyas do, but the Odins are just luxury for the most part, mostly because the one-shot challenge rewards gives you those Tamadra Odins who have the exact same active skill, and you can inherit them around. So you don't actually need to have the Odins for that active skill. Everyone in theory has a green Odin bind clear at this point in time. So you don't need the Odins, they're just a luxury. So it is problematic, I feel like, the featured Godfest exclusives for day 1 overall. Day 2 Chinese Celestials are at least a bit of an awkward place right now because the Heart Cross meta kind of pushed them out of relevancy when they used to be one of the strongest monsters in the game. However, there is a bit more of a shift for at least some of them, most notably Leyland and Haku, for like basically color combo leaders or color cross leaders, because Leyland at least has the advantage of benefiting, say, Tsubaki's, Ilm, Minerva, and Krishna to a certain extent, whereas Haku has great potency on Aizen, Dark Athena, and Yomi Dragon teams. So maybe they're making a shift to relevancy again, but for now, they are still a little lacking. If you do have those teams, obviously Haku and Leyland can benefit you. So I'm going to be going through them in a bit more detail. So Awoken Leyland has the tri-color board changer of Fire, Wood, Light Orbs, and Haste. So again, you can cycle your skills a little faster. All the leader skills aside from Sakuya have 16 times attack and 51% damage reduction against their respective colors. It's capable of clearing content. It's a little more challenging to play through, but at least they can stack rows for Leyland. But again, it's not worthwhile for the most part. You probably have a stronger fire leader somewhere, so it's probably better to use her as a sub. Now, the fact that she has this board changer that has synergy with Ilm, Minerva, Tsubaki, as well as Krishna if you have the combos, makes Leyland a lot more desirable than maybe her sisters, because Ilm Minerva teams require light, fire, and light, same with Tsubaki actually, so you require those same fire and light orbs. So it's one of the few board changes that does produce the 2 desired colors, and the fact that she's on color means she's a great inheritance option, as well as being actually a sub on those teams. Now, another thing I want to keep in mind is that all the Celestials do have potential for at least a double killer awakening form, in which they're able to do basically 9 times damage if the corresponding boss is a god and dragon type. So Leyland's main benefit's going to be on those teams that I mentioned, and one thing to keep in mind is they have great synergy of Yamato's active, so a very powerful combo is using Leyland then Yamato to create a 2/3 fire, 1/3 light board, and that's great for all of those respective teams because it's all their colors and you can basically deal explosive amounts of damage. Awoken Karen follows the exact same train of thought as Leyland, except it's different colors of water, wood, and dark. But unfortunately, Karen is is pretty much, I'd say, the weakest Chinese Celestial at this point in time. And it's not weak because it's a dramatic change in what's available through their kit, but more so because water has so much stronger full board changer options. For instance, you have Mori Montanari, Blue Sonya, Ryune, and Skuld, who all are powerful board changers, but probably more, like, basically they're all more powerful than Karen because they all provide something a little more potent. Like, Karen does require the board change combo to stack enough water orbs, so obviously it has potential advantage over Mori and Blue Sonya, who are a bit more random, but Mori and Blue Sonya are only a single active, and their stats are stronger, their awakenings are stronger, so they're just a better choice in most cases overall. Ryune and Skuld produce heart orbs, so again, heart orb generation is stronger than a tricolor without hearts. So Karen is just in a lacking place right now, because there's someone that does her job better for pretty much every single team. And unless you only have the combo synergy of say Citrus, Hermes, Hatsumes, and other options, you're probably going to be passing up on Karen's usage as a sub in most scenarios, because you probably don't want to inherit her because, again, the other board changes have more potency. Although one thing you may want to keep in mind is that she does have at least combo potential with Pandora on dark teams, but then again, Mei does that better because Mei with Pandora produces hearts. So again, she's just second best, unfortunately, so Karen is just lacking at the moment. And speaking of Mei has the same tricolor board changer strategy with the haste. Instead, she does use TPA instead of Rose. So the TPA does have relevance on Reincarnate, Bastet, and Vishnu teams because they are reasonably popular and reasonably powerful as well. Unfortunately, the active skill is again a little more lacking, say, compared to Verdandy's, because I will gladly trade haste for hardware generation any day of the week because I'd rather be able to heal and deal damage. So unless you're having board change synergy with someone else, it's better to generally run Verdandy's active. So a popular strategy would be using Mei's body because it has better awakenings for the most part, and inheriting Verdandy over top. Conversely, like I mentioned earlier, you can use Mei's board changer on dark teams. You do lose out on the stat transfer bonus, but it has great synergy with Pandora's because you have the 2/3 dark, 1/3 heal board. Awoken Sakuya was one of the most exciting leaders when she first came out, but she has pretty much declined very sharply as monocolored teams rose in proficiency because they activate damage more easily and are more durable because she has no defensive multiplier. It's 100 times damage, but it's a very scaling component because you have to match 4 specific colors and hit 10 combos. Now, if you're trying to hit those 10 combos, why not play Anubis, who does far more damage and just is just stronger overall from that damage output point of view, because 100 times is just not enough in all honesty. A lot of times you may hit most likely 7 to 8 combos, so that's 49 to 64 times, but you do have to obviously have those specific colors. So unlike Anubis, who can use any given board, Sakuya basically has to have those colors, so she's more restricted by comparison. Now, at least on the benefits, she is bind immune, does have this recover bind awakening, but for the most part, that's probably going to regulate her to a sub role or an inheritance role because her gravity is actually, and bind code is actually very unique because you are able to do 20% gravity as well as 3 turns of bind clear. Now, that allows you to have basically an offensive bind clearing option because most bind clears, for them, generally speaking, only have defensive components tied into it. So being able to deal damage while clearing binds can be invaluable because let's say you get to the boss and you have Sakuya's active skill charged up. Instead of just having a useless bind clear, you now actually have a way to deal damage. So it does have some merits in those cases. So Sakuya may be regulated to more of a sub role for that reason, or an inheritance option if you require that type of gravity. And last but not least is Awoken Haku, and Awoken Haku should actually have different awakenings. I don't know why it didn't change over, but Awoken Haku does have dual TPA, and the dual TPA is what's important with the Dark Orb Enhances because she is able to form, basically be a part of 3 of basically the top dark teams out there because the future Yomi Dragon, Aizen, and hopefully Dark Athena when it comes to North America are all 3 very powerful dark teams, and Haku fits beautifully on all of them because none of them require heart crosses, and her active skill with her awakenings have great synergy. Furthermore, because Akachi does exist, Haku's board changer is even more powerful because Haku's board changer does produce fire, water, dark. Akachi converts fire to enhanced dark and water to heal. So you can form a 2/3 enhanced dark, 1/3 heart board, and you have explosive amounts of damage for any of those teams because, well, aside from Dark Athena, of course, but the point being is you have explosive amount of damage for Aizen and Yomi Dragon teams, which is going to be your big burst wombo combo essentially. So she has lots of relevancy even though it's a heart cross meta. So I'm excited for when those cards start getting released in North America, most notably Yomi Dragon, which should be soon, Dark Athena hopefully as well. But the main issue is Haku is probably the most relevant Chinese god for those reasons. Furthermore, you are able to utilize Haku's other form, her dark red form, in order to capitalize on those killer awakenings if you need those niche farming potentials. So overall, I'd say Haku is currently the strongest Chinese celestial when especially Yomi Dragon is released. So in terms of Day 2's featured Godfest exclusives, it's a lot stronger by comparison if you don't care for Coyote and Kama, because it does feature the Dark Kali, but it features all the newer Godfest exclusives, which is quite amazing in all honesty. Like, it's rare to actually have a Godfest that basically excludes the Odins, Sonias, and Metatrons, so this is pretty amazing for the most part. So if you are focused on Godfest exclusives, it may be wise to roll in Day 2 because it features all the newer ones, and you're most likely going to roll something more powerful and potent by comparison to Day 1. So, in conclusion, this Lunar New Year Godfest is reasonably exciting. It's not obviously the most amazing Godfest, mostly because they paired a 5 times Godfest exclusive event with average pantheons at best. So, whether or not you choose to roll should be based on your own monster box and requirements. Naturally, if you have none of the Egyptian ones and Chinese Celestials, it'd be obviously a great time to roll them because you have the collateral benefits of rolling numerous Godfest exclusives. So let me know what you think about this Godfest overall. How many do you plan on rolling? And let me know what you think in the comments below. So hopefully you have a fantastic day. Happy Lunar New Year to all of you, and happy puzzling!